Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to NetGuru's Disruption Talks, episode number 109. And this episode will be something special. We usually talk a lot about virtual things, digital technology. However, today I want to talk about something really physical. And in fact, something for most of us very important, a product that is very important, however, rarely considered as a product category. We're going to talk about home or house, if you will. And it is my pleasure to introduce today Amit Haller, co-founder and CEO, one of the most interesting prop tech companies from America. Amit, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much for inviting me, Kamil.
Amit, how is the end of the summer experience in California for you?
Wow, what a summer, right? I mean, we definitely, which I think is going to be one of the subjects we are going to talk today about sustainability, but very unpredictable summer. One day super hot, suddenly splash of rain, and we see it all over the world, and we saw it in California.
Yes.
So the world is changing on us, and housing has to do with it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you begin with your short background introduction and tell us a bit more like how and why the story with Viv started?
Sure. Generally speaking, my background is being very much technologist and multidisciplined. Started actually in wireless communication and semiconductor. I created one of the very first Bluetooth companies in the world, doing the chips for the Bluetooth. Later on, start to see how we can leverage Bluetooth into consumer product, and worked on one of the very first smartphones for teenagers, in particular, targeting the teenagers market. And we're involved with very different disciplines and cutting-edge technologies, from semiconductor to software to devices, and all of those varieties. And then 2008 came with the big real estate crash, and very lucky, I decided to become a real estate investor out of nowhere. And the decision was October 2008, so I was super lucky, like at the bottom. Zero smart, but a lot of luck. And I also thought I'm going to retire because real estate is supposed to be very easy. So investment went very well because it was 2008. Retirement went very poorly because not only I understood it's a very hard work, but very soon after, bringing my technology background, I was start to be very passionate about how to change the construction industry and how to change the real estate industry and how to introduce new technologies into that.
You mentioned this crisis in 2008 in US, and I believe we are experiencing a new crisis. We have always challenges. How do you see, what is the status quo of the market, of the housing market in America right now?
Yeah, I mean, it's very interesting because we are in another crisis right now, but I would say almost 180 degrees different than the previous crisis. And also a lot of it has to do with the previous crisis. So let me explain that. To start with, what happened in 2008, because we could buy homes at a lower cost than what it cost to build them, new construction dropped significantly. So the new construction dropped from about 2 million homes a year down to 500,000 homes a year, and lasted for several years in that level. Now, there's something very interesting about homes consumption. It always goes up. And the reason is because the population growth. And there's about 2% or 2 million new households in the US every year. Yes, recession, no recession, there's going to be 2 million new households a year in the US. And by the way, this is pretty much true for every single country in the world. Higher percentage, lower percentages, but this growth is very, very steady and very predictable per country. So if you don't build homes, these households don't have where to live. And that's where the deficit start to create it. I mean, so we were short of about 1.5 million home a year for a few years, which piled up to about 6 million home deficit as of today. And that was true already for a few years, and that was part of the challenge for a few years. Then in the past 12 months or the 18 months, we start to have a new challenge, which is the interest rate becoming very high. Again, not only in the US, all over the world. But in the US in particular, people bought their home about 2 years ago at an interest rate of about 2% fixed. And now the interest rate is 6, 7%. So whoever bought their home, for them to move to a new home, even at the same price or even at a lower price, it means that their monthly payment is going to go up by 2, 3 times. So that's an impossible move, which is creating even further shortage because existing homes are not being sold at the same rate that we used to have. So yeah, we are in a housing crisis. People don't have where to live, population continue to grow, household continue to grow, and the construction doesn't catch up.
Yeah, and I believe there is another crisis that is beyond America, which is global. Something that is not very comfortable truth and bargain that construction market is really carrying the biggest percentage of the carbon blueprint for the world is caused by building, right? Building houses eventually. So what are the implications? Like, what do you think there is a hope for human beings?
So, I'm an entrepreneur and I'm optimistic. So I always live by the hope, right? And one of the reasons I do have hope, because I think there are solutions, right? I mean, there are solutions in line of sight, and it's really for us as humanity to pick up on those solutions. You very truly mentioned that housing is actually the biggest component of embodied carbon. Actually, it's a mind-blowing number. It's almost 40% of the embodied carbon is being created by homes, either during construction phase and the operation phase of the home. The other mind-blowing number that just happened to be exactly the same, 40% of the landfill in the world is due to waste in housing construction, which is crazy. And I think everything can be solved. And everything can be solved with a very new and fresh mindset. And maybe that's where probably the disruption come to place more than anything else. We are looking into industry that is, in some cases, thousands of years old. Concrete was invented by the Romans. So wherever we build with concrete, it's exactly the same system and exactly the same method. I mean, there's some improvement and some formula advancements, and some claim that still the Roman formula didn't crack yet because that was the best formula out there and no one knows what it is. But there's definitely advancement, but no breakthroughs. Wood construction, which is very popular in the US for housing and many European countries as well, is also coming from the same concept of I'm looking for the most accessible materials next door to me. I'm building next to the forest. Let's chop trees and build with the trees. That's the lumber for the wood. So it's always about the materials around me. So obviously those materials around me are not around me anymore because many cities don't have wood access anymore, and we need to ship this wood for thousands of miles or tens of thousands of miles, and sometimes even import it from foreign countries. But the momentum is there. And we need to take this highly momented industry and flip it over and say, forget everything you know. Let's think differently. First and for all, and you mentioned it in the introduction, Camille, is let's start to think about the home as a product. Now, on one end, a lot of people don't like it and said, no, this is not a product. This is where I'm raising my kids, and this is where I have the family and I have memories, and it's so personal. I don't want to productize it. I said, no, we'll keep it personalized. But let's think about it for as a product from the way we approach into the design, the way we approach into the manufacturing, the material types, etc. Let's start everything from scratch about it.
Yeah, like a car, for example, right?
Yeah. Cars initially were handmade, right? And Henry Ford was the first one that productized it and did everything right in order to make it a mass available. Now, until today, there are still custom-made cars in Italy and in Germany, and apologize if I forgot any other country that is really big about custom-made cars. But the mass market have unbelievable cars that can be very personalized, which have been fully productized. And that's what we need to do in housing as well.
So, this is definitely where you come with Vive offer here, right? And before this meeting, I've been thinking how much of actual building house is thanks to leveraging physical technologies, which is materials, for example, right? The way of building, the designing, the experience, and how much in it is thanks to the actual technology, the cutting edge virtual technology that we use every day. Can you give us a bit more idea on how the process, how the Vive is using this, physical and virtual worlds in order to, provide the value?
Absolutely. So, Kamil, in your introduction, you said that this is going to be more of a physical discussion and less of a digital discussion, but I think it's really an equal discussion. And even our fabrication, our manufacturing facility, we call it the digital fab, because the idea that whatever is not digitalized, whatever doesn't have a digital interface, should not be exist in today's world, right? I mean, and that's how we think about interfaces. And if this is a digital fab, the entire design process need to be done in the virtual environment, digital twin, very precisely, and predicting any manufacturing issues, simulating any experience opportunities with the consumer, and being able to ship it as in the virtual environment from one side of the world to the other, directly to the fabrication process. And our maintenance is digital, and our assembly on site, because what we build is actually we build walls, we build panels, floor panels and wall panels, which those floor panels and wall panels are perfectly completed and finished, including the exterior and interior finishing, the waterproofing, the structural component, the electrical, the mechanical, the plumbing. It's all built inside those walls. And they click one to another in the field very, very quickly. The sequencing of shipping it in the right order and the sequencing of assembly it, it's all being driven by the digital process. I mean, so it's digital all over, and it's really software all over, which end up to be very physical products, but it's all start in the very virtual environment.
And what about the actual homeowner experience? You mentioned there is of course, a software process and enabling tech within production, probably a lot of like data-driven development from the production perspective. But how about the actual end user, the homeowner? Is there any more than beyond physical experience for the homeowner when he gets the house from you?
Absolutely. Quite a lot of those. So let me start with the very, very basic thing in home, the walls. So we are used for walls which are either made of concrete or drywall, the sheetrock, etc., painted. And we use two walls that every time they're being scratched, it's very difficult to maintain and to fix them. And we are used to walls, again, in the US in particular, because of the wood structure and the drywalls that if there's moisture being developed in the walls. There is immediately mold being developed, and the entire wall need to be taken down and taken off and rip out, and flooding issues and all of those different things. Even my iPhone, I can drop it in already, or my watch, I can drop it in already, I don't know, like 20, 50 meters, whatever it is. I didn't track the last number, and nothing will happen it. But my most expensive product, the average cost of a home in the US is $500,000. And the one that's supposed to last for 100 years, and the one that I'm using it 16 hours a day, is the most sensitive product on earth. So starting with the walls, we use material which called high performance surfaces. It's coming from the same category of the solid surface like Corian, like the countertop material. It's a material that you cannot stain, you cannot scratch, very easy to clean, you just wipe it off. Very easy to hang out stuff on it, and if you need to drill into it, it's very easy to fix it, much easier than drywalls and painting and everything else. It's even antibacterial material. It was antibacterial before COVID, but post-COVID it became even a higher value, right? I mean, so it's even an antibacterial material. It's a super material. Everything else in life, we have super material. I mean, with the last Apple announcement, they're always pushing the materials to the next level and to the next edge. And in the housing industry, we're going backward. More concrete, more cement, more wood, etc. It's like kind of all these wrong materials around that without any understanding about what they need to be. It's a recycled material. It's full recyclable. Speaking of embodied carbon, the walls themselves, the structure are made of steel, not wood. Again, recycled and fully recyclable. Better on seismic environment, better on fires. I mean, we have so many fires issues around the world. I mean, we really need to make a big leapfrog here as far as the qualities and the user experience. One last point about user experience. So I started with the walls because that's what we see around that. That's the most damageable material and everything else around it. But there's many other elements that we needed to elevate. The quality of the windows, the quality of the interior and the exterior doors, the quality of the kitchen cabinets, because those are being used on a daily basis. I mean, in the tactile world, you're going to open and close a drawer in your kitchen cabinet every day. And I want to make you feel every time you open this drawer, I want you to feel very special. I want to feel the quality, and I want you to feel that it was worth the $500,000 you paid for this home. And last but not least, everything is smart today. Everything is run today by apps. And every microwave is way smarter than the typical home. So a $50 device could have so much smart, and a $500,000 device is really dumb. So we took the smart home experience, or what we call the digital home, to the next level. There's no mechanical switches anymore. It's all touch panels. Everything can be controlled from the app, the lights, the HVAC, the shades, the entire experience. Everything is dimmable, and everything is controllable in a very, very smooth and simple experience.
Gotcha. And that leads me, I try to avoid yet another conversation about AI. I think we have it enough, every one of us, every day. However, I have this, let's say, crystal ball question. And I would like to share my vision of the future, like really future in probably next 100 years, and how I envision living in a house, the house experience. And to me, there's actually in a conflict, a little bit of conflict of technology, because what you've been talking about, the being connected, this in my vision of next 100 years is like, I would like to be disconnected. I would like to be safe and also off the grid, and also my privacy. I believe that in next 100 years, living in a house, being disconnected and somehow safe from AI measuring your life is a luxury and might become a premium product, where I see maybe we're going to see houses with the commercials when you take a shower soon, right? So this becomes a dangerous product in a way. So so there's this dystopian moment in my head, like where is this going? How this smart house will become in the next 100 years? What is your crystal ball saying, Amit?
Well, first of all, maybe house with a commercial. It's not maybe, it's today. Alexa today on my kitchen countertop, providing me all the time commercials, right? And you are running out of toilet paper. I mean, so she even I call her she. Well, Alexa is she, right? So it's really already happening, and I think you just nail it down. The way we think about it is the following. So let's take this, and I don't think it's 100 years. I think it's a 10 years process, right? Because whatever we can imagine for 100 years is probably going to take in the next 10, 20 years with the rate of technology. So the way we think about it is the following. And I'll get a little bit philosophical right now.
Please do.
A house is really a habitat. Right? That's our primitive habitat. What it does for us, it's protecting us from the weather, right? It's providing us this protection from the weather. It's protecting us from extruders, right? I mean, all the external environments. It's creating for us kind of the family cell. So it has the physical, but also the emotional benefits around that. The other thing it does for us is actually bringing resources in and getting rid of resources of waste out. So the resources in is electricity, water, ventilation. I mean, that's what we need in order, well, to live. Actually, the most important thing we need today to live is internet access, right? I mean, without this, we cannot live anymore. More important than water, just kidding, but you get my point. And taking waste out. So again, ventilation, right? I mean, taking the carbon out. And obviously all the sewage. There's all it's not related directly to the home, but within the home proximity, that's the garbage cans, which there's collection and everything around that. So if we think about it, it's really kind of a habitat humanity. My co-founder, Ami Avrami, he has a very nice statement, which says, the house needs to start to work for us, and we should not work for the home. So that's how we see it in 10 years from now. This house is going to start to do whatever you need it to do. If it needs to protect you against the AI or against the cyber and everything else, that's part of the house. The home is a product. This product needs to protect you against the wind, against the cold, but against cyber attacks as well. This home need to be as much as self-sustained, right? So it needs to be the ability to generate its own energy, conserve its own water, recycle its own water, potentially even growing for you food. I mean, I know it sounds like crazy, but it's pretty simple, because if I'm going to have a hydroponic garden, which is somehow connected to the home, and I can use the waste of my own waste to generate the fertilization and the water for that, and it already has the energies, I mean, that's potentially going to be part of your habitat, kind of the closed habitat altogether. So we see it exactly the same way. Now, you mentioned AI. And none of us is going to escape AI, because AI can create a lot of efficiency for us. And AI can help the home, for example, to better understand how to manage its energy. But it's all about the limitation of the AI. What are we, and contain it. Is it public AI? Does everyone know how my home managing its energy? Or it's only the home itself figuring out for this family to participate in the family, in this family cell, and to provide the best atmosphere, the best environment for that family. So that's how we see it going. I mean, the house at the end of the day, it's going to be self-sustained. I don't necessarily say that it's not going to be connected to the grid, but it's going to be its own cell, managing its energy, generating its own energy, contributing some energy to the grid. Same thing with water, sewage, and everything else around it.
Gotcha. I can share one experience as being European, going to America. I guess we are always surprised with the everything is big in America experience, and that also reflects housing. A lot of big houses. So I'm curious what you do with Vive. Is that something that goes with the habit change and like this new way of thinking about how big my house should be, or how much do I need, or like the new more minimalistic, less consumption driven life? What is your observation about like the habits? You mostly work with American markets, so you probably see how people feel about houses these days
Yeah,
comparing to the past.
absolutely. So I have both perceptions, right? One, because I grew up in Israel, and half of my life was there, so which is much more similar to European countries, and travel quite a lot around the world in Asia and Europe and such. So I've seen a lot of this, and definitely I see the American perspective. I think that America is changing, very slow, but it is changing. And a lot about size matter. It's being changed with the younger generations right now, and actually even with the older generation, because people suddenly understand that a very big backyard is actually a liability more than an asset. I'm using it, I don't know, 5 times a year, but I need to water it, I need to mow it, I need to, every time there's a pipe broken down there, there's an issue there, etc. So those things I think are being evolved over time. Our contribution at Viv right now, from that perspective, is to create very efficient and well thought designs that you can achieve functionality without necessarily the size that's coming out of it. Because the easier thing to say, hey, I need more space, just make it bigger, or I need more space, and then to ask, you need more space for what? I said, oh, I really need good storage and good organizing. So one of the example I like to use is actually kitchen cabinets. Most kitchen cabinets, it's really kind of are not made of drawers. Most of the cabinets in the kitchen typically are not drawers, but doors or cabinets that are being opened up, and then like very large shelves. And what you see in this shelf is a single very high item that really fitting the entire height of the shelf, and everything else is super small. So there's tons of waste of space over there, just because this one single item. And if we start to organize those shelves differently and start to use way more drawers than shelves, then you can access actually for everything that is in the back of the shelf, which typically it's all those products which have been expired 5 years ago, and everyone forget them over there, right? I mean, they never find them, etc. So, and I gave a very specific example about kitchen cabinet, but it's true about everything in the home. Think through it, user experience, because user experience is not just the GUI in your iPhone or the app, right? I mean, user experience is everything. Everything, once it starts to be very well thought and being in place and organized correctly, suddenly a smaller home is becoming way more functional and way more spacious. And that's what we do at Viv to start to strive to this direction.
My another back from Europe and exactly Poland perspective, the COVID actually, especially here, we could see that the prefab housing and the minimal housing trend has just accelerated post-COVID. So I'm curious if you see it the same way in America, and has the actual COVID experience somehow had an impact on how people think about house, because it is somehow a shelter right now, a shelter function, right? Because of the COVID, and people been stuck at home somehow. This experience somehow made people rethink the
Yeah.
house experience.
It's an excellent point. I don't think I have a very particular data point about how post-COVID, I mean, how it thinks today, because the shortage of home is so large that it's getting to the point that people just, would buy whatever is available or whatever they can afford. And there's less thoughts about this optimization. But what we saw during COVID, we saw the following. There were two trends that became pretty popular. One is people start to spend more time to fixing and thinking through the usability of the home. Because if before there were only 16 hours a day, 8 hours awake, 8 hours asleep, now there are 24 hours a day, right? 16 hours awake. So they start, it's almost like double their needs about thinking about functionalities and usage of the home. And we saw quite a lot of this. A lot of remodeling of the backyard, a lot of pools coming in and all kind of stuff like that, because they actually try to bring more into the home, which is counterintuitive, right? Because they didn't go smaller, they go bigger, right? I mean, they try to bring even more to the home as such. Definitely one effect is we're going to work from home. We need to think about our working environment. I mean, what room or what consideration I'm going to work from. Suddenly people start to think about lighting that will be good enough for Zoom calls and everything else around that. The second trend we saw is a lot of people start to bring the auxiliary dwelling unit into their backyard. So this is like a small second home, typically, again, European-wise, I'm going to call it small 500 square feet, which is 50 square meter. 50 square meter in Europe, many times that's the main home. It's not the secondary home, right? But over there, that was the secondary one. And the reason for that was that people start to live multi-generation. So they wanted the older parents to live with them, or because kids or the young adults cannot afford to buy homes or to move out of the home, they move into the backyard. Or sometimes the older guys will move to the backyard to live in their ADU and actually rent the front home as an income source, right? I mean, so we start to see more and more of these type of trends that COVID accelerated.
Yeah, and definitely. And I'm just back from commercial real estate conference in New York last week, and what I was happy to see is the actual climate discussion we've been touching today, the carbonization that real estate is the biggest offender. It is one of the two biggest topics. Obviously, number one, AI, right? Like, which is like the optimizing through AI, especially in a difficult market for real estate right now. Everyone is looking for optimization on cost saving, but really the climate is important. And I already see companies, interesting companies in the space. One of them is a company from Montreal called Alveol, and they offer urban beekeeping. So they actually offer to the property owners and managers the way how you can introduce hives on top of your roof in order to create some kind of environment, natural environment, contribute, also educate people how to somehow embed nature and sustainability best practices into the living experience. So I'm curious, what is your recently, when you look at the space, the companies, startups, you live in California, probably you see a lot going on in the space, in technology, and not only. What is the most exciting trends or companies you've seen that are doing something good in that space?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I love this beekeeping idea. I mean, bees is or entire kind of vegetables, gardening, etc. It's a big passion of mine, and this is part of kind of this holistic approach and thinking through it. Which, by the way, have so many other benefits because, as you may know, local honey is one of the best way to treat allergies. So the allergies that's coming from the local flowers, the honey of these flowers from the bee is actually the best kind of antibiotic for that. So there's a lot of good things about creating those. Just to throw something on that end, I forgot what city it was, but one of the European cities gave away chickens to all the residents over there. And what happened is that those chickens actually started to reduce a lot the waste, the composable waste, because basically chicken eat everything. So all of your waste of food, you just giving the chicken, and they're so happy about it. They're giving you back eggs, and they're also eating a lot of the paste that going around the grass or everything else. So another kind of garden keepers in many ways. I mean, so there's many ways to deal with that. Nevertheless, the biggest problem we are going to face very, very soon, we are already facing it in a very large way, is water and sewage in a way as well. More cities in the US basically shutting down new construction because they don't have enough water supply, including some pretty rich cities in Texas and California and such. So water is going to be a big topic around that. And obviously around water is the great water recycling and water recycling in general, and water conservation, and there's so many things, and even more water generation, because you can actually, with enough energy, you can generate your own water out of atmospheric. So there's many different trends that we should follow. Sewage treatment the same way, and it's actually. So I need to talk about sewage. I know that it's not a very fascinating item, but it's a very interesting one. It's a big infrastructure investment, huge infrastructure investment. And then there's going to be counterintuitive things about that. If I don't flush enough water through the sewage gets clogged. So actually, the current sewage system want me to waste water, or they need us to waste water. So there's many different elements around that, and that will require a lot of innovation and a lot of thinking, in order to be able to build housing. We need infrastructure, and infrastructure is expensive and not agile. It's not like you don't build an infrastructure and 20 years after redo it because there's a new and better technology. So we are going to face some pretty serious issues around that.
Yep. Very interesting. And just that I would love to continue this conversation speaking about permaculture systems. That could be like, beyond housing experience, which is like, building communities, etc. I think that's a future. Like this is like very back to the roots, however, very futuristic, and unfortunately premium experience maybe for the future, like only for those who might be affording. So I hope people will also start thinking about it like as a luxury and get it for themselves. Amit, last question. So for folks who are watching this or listening to this in US, where physically people could find your homes and experience the Viv? What is the actual Viv? How the Viv house look like?
Absolutely. Right now, we operate in California. So people can experience the Viv home, and they can buy Viv home soon actually in California as well, in the Bay Area. We are expanding into South California. We are expanding into Texas. So we are coming soon in more states. We need to walk before we run, or we need to crawl before we walk. I mean, this is to reinvent this entire industry. It's a big take. Even though I've done Bluetooth semiconductor, I can tell you that by far this is way more complicated than semiconductor or wireless communication and everything else around that. I mean, and as I like to joke, we didn't do it because it was easy. We did it because we thought it's going to be easy, but it's not. So we end up with quite a journey, but we definitely figure it out. Our homes, just to complete on the energy efficiency part, our home are consuming less than half, 50% less the embodied carbon, or generating 50% less than the embodied carbon versus stick build or the traditional construction. And we are not done yet. We continue to go down significantly. And our landfill is 10 times less than traditional construction, which is also enormous. because all those issues are literally piling up, right? I mean, the water shortage is piling up, landfill literally is piling up, and housing. By solving housing, you're solving sustainability in a very big way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I look forward to see you expanding to Europe as well.
Absolutely, definitely on the plans, and we'll come to Europe at one point. And I really want to extend an invitation for everyone on this podcast or broadcast. Always contact us and come visiting.
Awesome. Thank you for your time today, Amit, and I look forward to seeing you in action. And Viv, fingers crossed for your endeavors. And yeah, have a great, lovely day in California.
Thank you so much for this opportunity.